I want to welcome everybody to the February 2026 meeting of the Parrot Club. We're very excited tonight to have Debbie Foster, a renowned behaviorist, give us a talk about screaming in parrots. Debbie is one of those people who had birds all her life, which she now knows didn't equip her for a lot. She's now a certified parrot behavior consultant through the International Association of Animal Behavior Consultants, a certified avian trainer and educator through the International Association of Avian Trainers and Educators, is a teaching assistant for living and learning with animals with Dr. Susan Friedman, an instructor in the parrot division for Companion Animal Sciences Institute, and has her own business called Parrot P's and Q's, which you can find on Facebook. She's an unabashed lifelong learner and loves to share current science-based information to benefit people and parrots. Her Facebook link will be in the YouTube video. So with that, I'd like to welcome Debbie to our club.
Thank you. Let's see if I can share my screen now. Okay, slideshow. Please tell me you see that. Okay, great. All right. So I'm just repeating everything that Amy just said. So we're going to throw a bunch of science at you. I am a huge science geek. I'm such a science geek that I have friends where we have date nights and we discuss science. Okay. I've got a horse training friend. I've got a dog training friends. I've got parrot training friends, and we really like to geek out with one another. So oftentimes, when people have a parrot, they go to Facebook for information for Facebook groups, and that's not usually the best source of information. I try to stay off there because it kind of makes me nuts, and I could spend too much time there. And so I don't do that. So the first thing we're going to talk about is, all right, we're going to talk about what is behavior. It's not what you think it is, most likely. It is something that we can see, something that is observable. Because we can see it, we can also measure it. Is it increasing or decreasing, or is some component of it increasing or decreasing? With screaming, it might be volume or it might be duration. All right, we can measure those things. It is overt. It is not something that's inside the animal. And by the way, we're not saying that animals don't have emotions. We're just saying that we can't see. That's a covert thing. That's inside the animal. So it doesn't fit our description of something that's observable and measurable, and it's not helpful to us in changing the behavior. So, hello, why did I just go backwards? What the heck? Huh. It's always surrounded by the environment. We cannot separate the behavior from the environment. We're going to talk a lot about that. And they're not doing it to drive us crazy. They're not doing it for no reason whatsoever. All behavior has function. And when I say that, I'm not talking about just birds. It's anything from humans to bacteria in a petri dish. Okay. Everything behaves for a function. So what is it not? By the way, this is one of my newest clients. I love this little guy. He was bought from a pet store. Somebody didn't know, she lost her husband. She's 80 years old. She went and got a little budgie, and I think he was about 4 months when we started training, and he is the smartest little guy on the face of the planet. He is awesome. So it is not our attempt to say what the bird is thinking, feeling, or believing. That's inside the bird too. And how do we know if we're right? People will argue until I turn blue in the face about, I do too know what my bird is thinking. You really can't prove it, okay? You just can't. And it's disconnected from the environment. It's not disconnected from the environment. It's always part and parcel of that environment. And it's not random or done for no reason. So the working definition of behavior is going to be something that's functional, observable, measurable, and here's a kicker, well defined. We're not going to say the bird is just not quite right or the bird's kind of grumpy. All right, that's not well defined. So we're going to hit all of those marks when we start talking about behavior. And I think the simplest common denominator we can have is to say that when an animal behaves, no matter what the animal is, it is behaving to get, or to get away from something as a result of its behavior. That boils it down to the simplest common denominator. We behave to get or get away from something. If we start looking at the behavior, we have to also examine two other components because these things always exist as a group. You cannot pick out just one and not look at the other things. The three things are a unit together. So antecedents, behavior, consequences, and the easiest way to think about those things, if you haven't already been exposed to this, is you're just going to learn your ABCs. Okay, that's easy enough. And you're going to see that the antecedent and the consequence are in the environment. The behavior and the behavior is in the B. Okay, so but they do always exist together. We can't separate it out. This is called the smallest meaningful unit of behavior. Antecedents are in the environment again, and they immediately precede the behavior. Okay, it's not something that happened 2 weeks ago or even 2 hours ago. They almost touch the behavior. Okay, so that's a misconception in some of the groups. It does not cause the behavior. That's another biggie there, but it does set the stage for the behavior to happen. Okay, think about biting. Okay, I know we're going to talk about screaming today, but let's think about biting. I put my hand in the bird's cage. Does that make the bird bite me? No, but it sure as shooting sets the stage for it, right? Because it's a hard fact if a bird can't reach us, a bird can't bite us. Okay, so I have set the stage for the biting behavior to happen. And then, of course, what do? We blame the animal. He bit me for no reason. Nope, that's not the way that worked. And there are two different types of antecedents, and a distant and immediate antecedent. And the immediate was more what I was just describing, but I'm going to show you how we might get information from both of them that will be useful to us in assessing what's going on and then making changes. So a distant antecedent is useful. It is good to have, okay? And things that might be part of it might be the animal's age, okay? If I know the animal is 75, well, that animal's got some age on him and might have some physical infirmities, might have some arthritis, perhaps, might have heart disease, might have atherosclerosis. There could be all kinds of things that might be part and parcel of that age. Gender, sometimes it's useful to know that. I tell my clients all the time, get your birds seen by an avian vet. Make sure they do blood work. Make sure you know the gender. Well, I don't really need to, do I? know you said you do. If your bird ever gets sick, and you know it's male, they can take egg binding right off the diagnostic list. Okay, so yeah, it's useful to know what the gender is. Species, we would like to know that. Some parrots behave a bit differently based on their species, their breed. If you think about energy level, for example, Amazons can move very differently than say a cockatiel does. All right. So we can generalize some things from that. The background, if you know what happened to the bird, where it came from, what its history has been, that might provide you with some information. The same with the environment. Now, we don't always know this and we don't always need it, but I do throw it out there just to say sometimes we get information from that we can then use. The immediate antecedent, or just the antecedent, happens immediately before. And what it does is it signals the opportunity for the behavior, okay? And it also signals what will be reinforced, okay? So the animal can learn, do this because you get this from that antecedent, the immediate antecedent. That's pretty sophisticated for animals, right? Especially when you start talking about, things that we thought were not trainable. People are training alligators. They are training sloths. I've seen electric eels trained. Did you see the Budweiser commercial with the eagle on the back of the horse? Yeah, that's pretty fascinating. And that was not AI, by the way. The two trainers have been identified. So behavior can be seen and measured, not random, has function. It's usually a single behavior. So if you've got a whole flock, you're usually not talking about the whole flock, although there are times when you might choose to do that for some reason. If you're dealing with a flock of geese and they're all moving in the same direction, you might want to look at the group instead of a single, but usually it's a single one. And it's also usually a single behavior. So we're not saying, oh yeah, the bird screamed and lunged and bit and then pulled out its tail feather. That's just a white noise, okay? It's just a stream of stuff, and we're not going to be able to get the information that we need from that. So we're looking at a single behavior that we're going to very clearly define and describe. And then the consequences immediately follow the behavior, also in the environment. And Susan Friedman frequently says it touches the behavior. And I like that analogy because, immediately should do it, but touching, we have a different way of looking at that then. So it immediately afterwards. And there are two types of consequences, and as we're starting to get into the meat and potatoes here, that I'm going to want you to know when we start talking about what do we do about screaming. Okay, so that's why I'm paving the way for these things. The two types of consequences are reinforcement and punishment. Okay, always. Those are the two types of consequences. Now, what does that mean? Well, they both have positive and negative forms. And when we're talking about positive and negative, we're not talking about a moral judgment. We're talking about things being added or subtracted from the environment. So, two types of reinforcement, positive and negative. You can have positive and negative reinforcement and positive and negative punishment. So, this breaks it down a little bit better. Reinforcement is something added to the environment, okay? And we notate that many different ways, but this is the one that I typically use. R, capital R for reinforcement, and a plus sign. And keep in mind, it's no value judgment, it's no morality, it's just saying we're adding something to the environment. So if I say, I present my hand, there's an antecedent, the bird steps onto my hand, and I deliver a treat, okay? I am using positive reinforcement, and we're expecting that that's going to shift to the future frequency of that behavior. But you can also have negative reinforcement where something is subtracted from the environment. Here's the confusing part. It took me forever to start to really tease out the tendrils on this. Both positive and negative will increase or at least maintain the future rate of the behavior, both of them. And you might be saying, but I can see where positive reinforcement would do that. The animal would behave to get something. But you think about how people use towels around birds. They want the bird to do something, to step up, to go in the cage. And have you seen people holding up a towel and the bird runs inside the cage? And then what do they do with the towel? They subtract it from the environment, right? So the bird has behaved to get away from something, all right? Now, if you look at these two, it's pretty obvious that using positive reinforcement is likely to build a stronger trust relationship, however we want to describe that or define that with an animal than using negative. I mean, we would behave like that. If somebody tells us we can have 2 weeks vacation over our already established vacation and we're going to get a $50,000 raise, that's pretty positive. We're going to be really working hard, behaving to get that. But if you use negative reinforcement where you're subtracting something, what happens is the animal usually behaves to the least degree possible to get away, to escape the negative. All right. So you're not going to see these animals that have a really good trust relationship with their owner. And I'm sure you can think of many, many birds that you thought, wow, this bird will do anything that this person wants them to do. But it's this history of positive reinforcement that you're seeing. Birds that are trained with positive reinforcement are more likely to supersize their behavior. I'm working with a mess of a macaw right now. It's a blue and gold macaw, uh, history of mutilation. Very clever bird as far as getting out of the collars that they put on him, and they've used quite a variety of them, and getting a toenail up under it and ripping his skin open again that way. And so we're playing around with quality of life issues, certainly. And the other day I thought, you know what? I always put foraging out for him, and I always go in and give him some treats, and I always scatter those treats all over everywhere so he moves around to hunt for them, and he's getting a little bit of exercise. But I thought we're gonna do some shaping today. We're gonna do some free shaping. And so I had a handful of sunflower seeds, and what I did is I just waited for him to shift his weight at all and said, good, and gave him a treat. Well, he didn't know what I was talking about. Okay. I waited for it to happen again, and I didn't care if it was to the left or to the right. I was not going to be picky about this. And as soon as he shifted, I said, good, gave him a treat. And then you saw him start to experiment with a little bit. Does she want this? And I'd say, good, and give him a treat. And then I started looking for the foot to come off the perch at all. I mean, if I could see any daylight under it at all, I was going to take that and say, good, and give him a treat. Because my thing is, I want to shape the wave. Is it because he needs to learn how to wave? No, he needs to learn how to control his reinforcers, and he needs some mental stimulation. And so all his life has been about this behavior that he has of ripping into his skin, chewing or slashing with his toenails or whatever. I'm giving him a different outlook. So it's funny because we've only done this twice. He was bouncing up and down when he saw me in the environment last Friday. So when I'm making a difference there with him already. You can tell, oh, here she comes. She's got something good for me. I'm getting attention. I'm getting a treat. I'm getting this happy voice. Maybe we don't know what he's really working for, but it's something positive. So punishment is going to do the opposite of reinforcement. Punishment is going to decrease the future rate of the behavior. Okay. Positive punishment adds something. Think yanking on the chain, slapping an animal. It's usually something pretty negative. And negative punishment subtracts something from the environment. Okay. So both of those are going to decrease the future rate, but when it comes to putting something on a balance scale for the most aversive, you're looking at positive punishment there. So just some things to keep in mind there. In addition to the A, the B, and the C, we can also write a prediction about the behavior of interest to us. And think about this as a working hypothesis, okay? So if we have the B identified, we're going to say, is it going to maintain or decrease in the future, given the A and the C? And another way I like to think of that is when A, if B, then C will more or less, okay? So if I talk to people and I say, given what you've described, given the behavior that you described, okay, that we can see, that we can measure, given the antecedent conditions, which seem likely, okay, given what you think is the maintaining consequence, okay, we can make a pretty darn good reasonable guess. It's an educated guess. And then we can test that. So it gives us, oh, not a spaghetti at the wall approach, not just faking it until we figure something out. We're systematically working through this process. So we're going to practice now, okay? And all of these pictures are mine. They're all birds that I've worked with at one point or the other. So I decided to incorporate a distant antecedent in this. Remember that we do not always need it, but I thought in this particular case, it might be useful to us. So the owner's been away from home for 8 hours. The blue front Amazon has been in the cage. Okay. The immediate antecedent is the owner comes home. Oh, and I've got a B, an A where I should have a B. The B is bird screams. We could be more specific if we wanted. We could talk about the volume and duration if we wanted, or we could talk about the pitch. If a bird has a very high pitch, shrill scream, we could add that. But we can all visualize bird screaming, right? No bird owner is not going to have experienced that. And then the consequence is the owner talks to the Amazon. So here's the setup we've got. Owner comes home after 8 hours. The bird screams. The owner talks to the Amazon. Now, if everything stays the same, if nothing changes here, What do you predict for the future rate of the screaming behavior? Do you think it's going to maintain or increase, or do you think it's going to decrease? You can unmute your mic and chime it in if you want.
Maintain.
Yeah, yeah, at least maintain, if not increase. I would agree with that.
Increase.
Absolutely. Um, and what was the likely function? Remember, all behavior has function. So what was the likely function of the screaming? Why do you think he screamed when she came home?
Reading.
What?
Attention.
Reading.
Attention. Yeah, absolutely. It was the most likely function of screaming is attention. I'm not saying it's the only function, but most of the time it's for attention. And attention can look like so many different things as we're going to see. So yeah, I would say if that was the function. So if we know that behavior is reinforced by positive reinforcement, adding something, we can see that something's been added here. The attention has been added. And so we're going to get that the maintaining or increasing in the future. Does that make sense? I've only got two. Okay, I got good. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. So this seems like everybody ought to know this. Trust me when I tell you. Everybody does not know this. This is what I do all day, every day. Now, was the C, was the talking to the animal, was that reinforcement or punishment? It was reinforcement, and it was positive reinforcement because something was added. So this person's going to be pretty darn frustrated because they think they're doing something that should stop the screaming, right? When instead they're doing something that will maintain or increase the screaming. So that's going to be a problem in the long run. And sometimes we have to think about how long a behavior's been going on. It's not that behavior can't be changed, but I always give the analogy of somebody who bites their nails. If you've chewed on your nails all your life, you're probably not even aware of bringing your fingernails to your mouth and starting to nibble on them. It's just something that you do, okay? So this screaming can be the same type of thing. It can be a little hardwired, and it's not saying that you should give up, but I would try to intervene earlier rather than later. And of course, we all work in the rescue world, so we may not have that opportunity to intervene before it's a well-established habit.
Okay,
Um,
Debbie, I'm gonna interrupt in 1 second.
okay.
Somebody is drawing on your slide. I assume by accident.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. It's not me.
Yeah. Please do not click on the annotate thing. And now the question is, how do we get rid of it?
I have no idea. This has never happened before.
I've seen this in other talks, and what happens is it stays there. So
Ha.
I'd rather that not be on all your slides. Um,
Will it be on all of them or
my experience, you know what? I just pulled
it
up the annotate.
will? Yeah, it will, because there's the next.
Okay, go back to the previous slide. Okay, clear all drawings. Whoops. Aha.
You
Okay,
did it. What'd you
I
do?
I clicked on the annotate button and a little side menu comes up, and I
Okay.
clicked on the trash button, and it asked me if I wanted to clear some drawings or all drawings. But what I'd like to do is turn off annotate. So let me see if there's what I can do. Doc toolbar, save, clear, color. Let me share here. Trying to see something that turns off annotation, but I'm not seeing it. Okay, you know what? So I will research that afterwards, but for now, if I see anything, I know how to clear it. And I would just caution everybody, please do not click on that little button that shows it's in green on the left side of the screen, and it
Right
looks like a
there.
pencil drawing. That's when you have meetings and people are whiteboarding basically, but I will have to see how if I can disable that for meetings. But in the meantime, please don't do that. Thank you.
All right, so let's move on to the next one. I tried to come up with a variety of different things. So I gave you another distant antecedent, a 40-year-old Goffins, newly adopted from a rescue. The owner appears in the doorway is the antecedent. The Goffin starts to, and she used the word screech, so I put the word screech here, and I think it implies a higher pitched, louder sound, right? And the owner yells, "You hush up!" Okay, so what's going to happen here? Will the Goffin screeching maintain, increase, or decrease in the future?
Increase.
Yep, it
Yeah.
sure will. Regardless of what the person who did it thought, it certainly will. And what was the likely function of the behavior?
Attention.
Yep, attention again. Screaming is almost always for attention, or, maybe pain sometimes, but mostly for attention. And was the behavior reinforced or punished?
Reinforced.
It was reinforced, which is going to increase the future rate of the behavior. Was something added or subtracted?
Added.
Yeah, the screaming of the owner was added. Now I have to tell you the backstory here. This little guy came in and was so shut down for 6 months. He stayed at the back of his cage. He did not come down when the food bowls were put in. He had to have eaten sometime, obviously, but we did not see him do it. And despite me offering every treat I could come up with, he was not interested in engaging. He wouldn't take anything from my hand. He tried to not even be oriented in your direction. But I'm training in a big room, and birds are capable of observational learning. So he's getting the benefit of watching all of these other maybe 15, 20 birds be trained. And over that 6 month period, that really worked for us. And so this little guy was at the front of the cage one day when I went in and making really nice little quiet noises like, hey, like, oh, he's down. So I'm handing him treats through the bars and we're in business at that point. And unfortunately, he was really dadgum cute. And it's terrible to say it that way, but the cuter the birds are, the more appealing they are to people, whether they have the knowledge or experience to really deal well with the bird. I'm trying to be very tactful. And this person did not, but she fulfilled the requirements. And then we worked with the bird, and wouldn't you just know that the bird chose the very first time when they have to pay me to work with them for certain species before they adopt them. And that way it slowed the rate of return down. So this little guy picks that training session to step up. I'm like, dadgummit. I'm like, wouldn't you just know it? And she was so freaked, she almost dropped the bird. So about 2, 3 weeks later, I am working with another bird. I see her come in. I said, "Hey, how's my little friend doing?" And she said, "You mean the screamer?" And I said, uh, "Has he been vocalizing at your house all the time?" And I said, "Well, I'm surprised because we didn't hear anything here, but you change the environment, you can change the behavior." I said, "Remember, we talked about a lot of different ways that you can provide attention. I do not do that. I just yell, 'You hush up,' when he screams." So she was not connecting the dots between her behavior and the birds. And so she was not particularly open-minded about listening to us, discussing it with her. And the bird came back about 3 weeks later. And I remember walking in and seeing him and said, "Buddy, this is your lucky day. You're exactly where you need to be." He is now with a wonderful woman. She lives at, I think, want to say West Virginia, maybe. She drove a long ways to come and interact with this bird and to work with me. This bird is like a whole different individual. He has an enriched home. He has all kinds of things. She's given him the space to do what he needs to do at his pace, and he's picking up the pace radically. It's it's one of those reinforcing things for me to see where he was and where he is now. And no, I don't know how much longer he will live, but man, he's got a good life now. And that's what we live for. All right. So, at a rehoming organization with 40 or 50 birds in multiple rooms, the owner of the rehoming organization reported that a particular bird screamed, and this was a quote, all day long. Okay. So, okay. Couldn't figure out an antecedent. We could actually figure out that the umbrella cockatoo screamed in 3 note burst, just really loud. Okay. Couldn't figure out what the consequence was either. So I'm like, now what? And this was fairly early on in my career. I'm like, what are we going to do? How are we going to figure this out? So I thought real hard about it and I asked for volunteers. I said, I want somebody to do a science experiment with me. Anybody willing? And I got quite a few people. And I got enough that I was able to have a volunteer every hour that the rescue was open for about 2 weeks. And so I gave them a clipboard and a spreadsheet to fill out and said, as soon as he starts screaming, note the time of day, hit the stopwatch and tell me how long that screaming lasts. Okay. And then if you can hear anything else that might contribute to anything at all, it doesn't matter if you think it's related or not, just write it down. And so these people did a great job. And what did we learn? Well, we learned the owner didn't know what she was talking about because it would be unlikely a bird would scream all day long, right? You got to stop and eat at some point. I mean, you're going to get tired and need a nap at some point. So even though she was really well educated, it broke with this bird. So we learned that the bird was most likely to scream between 9 and 11 a.m., that the bird never screamed after 2 p.m. Okay, so it was just as reliable from every single reporter was reporting the same data. Wow, that was awesome. Two really smart people, and I don't think I would have picked this up. So I was so impressed, and I thought, can this possibly be right? One of them wrote down another bird is doing the same thing. I'm like, what? And we never did figure out if the other bird was the antecedent or if the other bird was a consequence. And I suppose it could have hypothetically been both. And it was an African gray that was nowhere near this cockatoo. In fact, was not in the same room, was not within line of sight, but certainly could be heard. And instead of trying to change this, what we did is we moved the African gray so that he could not be heard by the cockatoo. Problem solved. It was amazing to look at that. You know, we could have worked for years at trying to change this, and really, it was just a matter of changing the environment because behavior is surrounded by the environment. So that was what we did in order to address this. That was a huge, huge learning opportunity for me. If you go on the internet, here's what you're going to hear. Green cheek conure. I don't know about y'all, but we've got green cheek conures coming out our ears in this area because they are still sold in pet stores. And the employees don't have any information about them. And they're cute and they're small and they're really expensive at the pet stores. And so people think cute and small adds up to easy and they use too much force and pressure against this bird and they end up bleeding. Yeah, whoops. And then they turn them into a rehoming organization. So it's not uncommon for the one that I work with most often, which is Companion Parrots Rehome, to have 8, 10 green cheek conures at one time because they just keep rotating. When the black-capped green cheeks became very popular, I made a little bet with myself, how long till the first one's in? Because people thought they weren't green cheeks. They were something else, something exotic. I don't know. They were still green cheeks. So in they come, and we had a problem with them. So if the owner is within line of sight, the bird vocalizes at a high volume and pitch, and the owner either sings or whispers or whistles to the bird. Okay, that's usually the information. When the bird is screaming, you sing or you whisper or you whistle to the bird. So, what's the problem here?
Positive reinforcement.
It sure is. Yep, and positive reinforcement will increase. Look at the dog crying over there. He can't open the door. will increase the rate of the behavior. So the problem is also the order here. If the owner had started singing, whispering, whistling before the screaming started, we could have been having something that we could work with. But he or she is reinforcing the screaming because it's in the consequence position. So if you see something in the consequence position that can actually affect the rate of that behavior, you've got to say, okay, this is what we need to be changing here. We're not going to change everything. We're just going to change that. And more social media advice. It's I don't know that I have ever seen a distant antecedent described in a social media setting. I might see a very long-winded story, but not necessarily a distant antecedent. So I left the A off. The eclectus vocalizes loudly, and the owner walks up and covers the cage. Now, this one is pretty darn subtle. This one got me in trouble. I was working with Susan Friedman, and I'm like, we can't figure this out. And she said, Debbie, no, I can't figure it. Debbie. And so I eventually figured it out, and then I wanted to slap myself in the head because I thought, how obvious is this? But it wasn't to me then. And I know that a lot of people are thinking, well, that's okay, right? Nope. So what do you think? What's the problem here? And keep in mind the way that the antecedent and the behavior and the consequence are related, touching one another, proximity and time. So what's the problem with this?
It's a punishment.
It's
Receiving
intended
attention.
punishment.
It's getting attention, and that's feeding it, and so it's going to continue doing it.
What gives it attention?
The owner coming by and covering the cage.
Yes.
That's attention.
Ding, ding, ding. It's not even the covering. The most immediate consequence is the owner walks to the bird, right? Walks up to where the bird is. That's attention, all right? So covering the cage, which I'm sure in this person's mind, she intended it to punish the vocalization, but that occurs after it's already been reinforced. So you see how subtle this can be sometimes, sometimes we have to really sit back and think and look again and say, what touches that behavior? And is that likely to increase it or decrease it? And I remember telling Susan Friedman, no, I swear to you, nobody talks to the bird when they're going up. They just cover the cage. She said, Debbie. It took 4 or 5 Debbies before I went, oh my God, we walk up to the cage. She said, right. All right. So with some birds, that would be enough. Okay. That is a form of attention. I scream, they come running. Woohoo, I won. So we have a superpower, and this is something that Amy and I were talking about a little bit beforehand because this is something we don't think about. All right. We may not need to do the whole ABCP thing. We might be able to do something just to set up the environment for success. So this superpower is called antecedent arrangement. We're going to arrange the environment to set the bird up for success. So for example, if you have to be on a work call, um, or you need a little downtime after coming home from work, or the bird screams at dinner time, you can set all of those environments up for success. I have a wild caught male umbrella cockatoo. I put him to bed before I got on this call because he likes to go to bed about 6:15. So I made sure that he was in bed. He's in a different room than he usually is, but he's covered as he usually is. So he was taken care of ahead of time. I also, is this the slide that I have it? No, I'll back that up. So I do have some pictures of something to show you for that. If you needed a little downtime coming home for work, but the bird is like, well, you haven't seen me all day. Okay, what can you give the bird to do as soon as you walk in the door before the screaming starts? Do they have a favorite toy that they like to play with? Do they have could you give them something like a foraging food? A green bean, a sugar snap pea, because those are things they've got to bite into and get into. It takes a little more time to do that. Give them, make a bunch of toys. One in the cage. Is what? Um, And same if they scream at dinner time, well, hey, we're hungry when it's dinner time. Give them an appetizer, give them something to eat while you can be preparing their meal. I love chop because all you gotta do is stick a spoon in the bag and put it in the bowl, so there's not much prep work doing. And it's a bonus if you can give them something to do that can't be done at the same time as the undesired behavior. I'm not going to say that parrots cannot scream and eat at the same time. I'm sure somebody would immediately pop up and go, well, mine can. I'm not going to debate that with you, but it's less likely, I think, that they're going to be doing that. All right. So if you got them involved in something, that's going to give you some time and it may prevent the undesired behavior from happening. Notice I did not say bad behavior. It's not a bad behavior, it's a functional behavior. All right. We have to keep saying that over and over and over again. So another thing that we can do, and this I know probably a lot of you know Bonnie, with I call him Super G, Super Gabriel. I've been working with him since Gabriel came home. I don't know, he was maybe 5 months old or something when we started working, and he's, I think, just turned 5, maybe 4. But anyway, he's an amazingly empowered bird because Bonnie recognized early on that some of the things that she had held really hard to were not accurate. They probably were, given her experience with her previous bird Patches, because Patches lived, I think, over 25 years. So it was probably commonly accepted then, but we've learned more. We continue to learn more almost every day. And she's been very open-minded to taking that and applying it to Gabriel's environment, to Gabriel's experiences. And so that's been amazing. So we have one tool in our toolbox called DRI, which is differential reinforcement of an incompatible behavior. Okay. That's a long one. Differential reinforcement of an incompatible behavior. What we mean is the animal cannot physically do the undesired behavior and the desired behavior at the same time. We cannot whisper and scream at the same time, for example. Okay. So this is a good example of something we can choose to do. We can choose to ignore the loud vocalizations, and we're going to supersize attention for the quieter vocalizations. And we cannot be stingy about this. We're trying to tell the bird, put it on that old-fashioned balance scale. This gets you nothing. This has boom, everything. You're going to just get a huge amount of something that you value. And you're not picking, the bird is, okay? So if you know that this bird of shredding paper, you're going to give the bird a boatload of paper to shred, knowing that he is unlikely to be vocalizing at the same time. Ooh. Where's the rest of my presentation? Okay. Um, so with differential reinforcement, you have a couple of other different types. I don't know where the rest of this is, so we're just going to keep going. You have differential reinforcement of an alternative behavior. So if there's a single behavior that you want the bird to do instead of the undesirable behavior, that's what you're going to reinforce, okay? And you're going to be very consistent. The more consistent you are with this, the stronger the link the bird will get. Do this to get this. Gotcha. I'm going to do this more, and I'm not going to do this as often. Okay. And I'm not saying they will never do that. That's a fallacy, I think. That bird has a behavioral repertoire, just like we do. So it's like an invisible suitcase they carry around with them throughout their lives. It's always in there, okay? And there are times that something may bring it out, may evoke that behavior. But again, we're putting it on this balancing act. So if this works better for the bird, gets them things of value, and this does not, they're going to do more of this as long as we're consistent. We can't be stingy about it. So we've got DRI. We just talked about DRA. And the other is DRO, which stands for differential reinforcement of other. And in that case, and I do this very rarely, but if it's a really well-established screaming behavior, this bird's been screaming for years, and the person's been complaining about it for years, and the person's probably been reinforcing it without knowing they were doing it for years, then I'm going to be really, really generous with my approach. And I'm going to differentially reinforce anything other than the screaming behavior. So, examples. That bird sitting on the perch staring at his toes, I'm going to reinforce that. If the bird goes to eat, I may reinforce that and throw a treat in the bowl. If they touch a toy, I'm going to reinforce that. If they go, I'm going to reinforce that because it's not screaming. All right, I am going to supersize every other thing, but not screaming. Okay. And you got to be consistent here because here's the science. If you break down and you reinforce the screaming, you are setting yourself up for a big problem. So we can say, but I only did it once. You know what? It may not matter. Okay. If you do it once, the bird processes that information and they say, well, wait, this worked for me in the past and they did it again. So I'm just going to keep going and keep going and keep going and keep going. And then it's called an extinction burst. Oftentimes the behavior gets worse before it gets better. And so if the person caves in during an extinction burst and goes, stop screaming anymore, okay, they just provided a lot of attention for the screaming. And now they've also reinforced that behavior at a higher rate or loudness level. So the next time the bird wants attention, they're going to start from there and work their way up. So now we've really created a mess, okay? So get earplugs, do what you need to do so that you do not respond. And I want to be real clear here. I'm not just talking about verbal responses. There are some birds, this is an opinion and not a scientific fact. I have not seen any research that supports this, okay? But based on my experience, you flick your eyes at a screaming cockatoo and it will be enough to keep them going. That form of attention can be just enough to keep them going. So I really am careful because I'm training in a big open room. If one of the cockatoos goes off, I don't, I'm watching everybody because there's visitors there and they think it's funny. Oh my goodness. I'm like, get away from there. Go walk away, pretend like we're deaf. We hear nothing. And I tell them that ahead of time because I don't want to reinforce that. That type of thing costs them their home, and it's so hard. So we just need to make sure that people understand the science so that we can get away from that. So be really clear that extinction burst is painful, okay? And as long as you don't respond, you're on the right path. And I like to tell people it's actually a good sign. And people look at me like, say, what? If the bird is trying an extinction burst, it's throwing its last effort at it. Before I'm going to do it again, I'll get what I want. Okay? So it's a good sign that they're putting that much energy into the unwanted behavior because we're getting somewhere. Okay? And the
I have
other
a question. Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So I find that for my parrots, it's enough for them to hear me moving.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's enough reinforcement. And I absolutely have to just like sit down where I am and if I'm trying to give them the silent treatment, it not even move. Is that a thing? I mean, like it seems like it's a thing to me, but I'm just curious if you're finding that happens for other people.
Yeah, so what's interesting to me is I would consider you moving to be the antecedent. So
Hmm.
what comes before the behavior?
No,
So
the behavior's happening and I have extracted myself but I need to make sure they can't hear me moving at all in order for them to, get this message. And as far as the reinforcement is concerned, if that makes sense.
yeah, interesting. We want to take some data on that one. So what I
Okay.
would
I was just curious. I
start
don't want to derail everything, but
no,
I
it's a
just wanted to
great
raise it.
question though. Start
Yeah.
taking notes. You may find that there are other contributing factors. And then think about what could I do? How can I set them up for success? So if you obviously want to move around. Now, is this at nighttime after they've been put to bed by any
No,
chance?
no,
Okay.
no,
All right.
it's not. Yeah.
So I like to give the birds something to do instead. So if I'm coming in and I need, some time to get stuff done, that's when I'm going to deliver the toys, the screen that I don't have. Somebody drew on the thing. It's in yellow this
Oh,
time.
oh, I see. Yeah, let me.
Okay. Yeah, so I might be thinking about how can I arrange the environment ahead of time, walk in there, have stuff made. I love the people that have jars or plastic containers and they've taken unbleached coffee filters or paper cupcake liners. There's a debate on whether those are safe. You can do your research yourself. And put pellets in them, wrapped them up, or little pieces of nuts, wrapped them up, a favorite food, wrapped it up, and they can just grab a hand of those and put them in the bowl. So there's no stopping to make it. It's been done in advance. So just as you're going by, boom, and the bird goes, woohoo, and runs over there to engage those, which means it's less likely that they're going to be vocalizing.
Mm. Thank you.
Antecedent arrangement again, setting yourself up for success. It's amazing the things that we can do. If this presentation had been earlier in the day, I took well, I don't know where it is. I took one of those sisal mats and then I just put those quick links, the plastic quick links, all over it and I hung things from it. I did it while I was watching the Super Bowl. So I just kept adding to it and adding to it. And there's stuff that dangles and there's stuff that rings, like the little bells are on there. Because there's enough to keep him busy for a while. He's a cockatoo, so he's going to destroy it in pretty short order, but it's big enough and it's got enough stuff on it. It's going to keep him going for a while. So I'm saving that. I know where it is. It's in the hall on the table for when I really need it. I'll make some more, but it's the only one I have right now because I want to be able to offer it to them. We can't just say, be quiet, I'm on a call. What do we want them to do instead? Give them a job to do, and you'll have less of the undesirable behavior. It's not going to buy you 6 hours probably, but it will do something. Give them a nut in a shell because that takes longer for them to access than a nut that's not in a shell. If they've got a food that they would do anything for, save it for a time when you need them engaged in that so that you've got time to do something or the quiet or whatever you need to do something. Makes sense? Okay. All right, so we've covered a lot of territory. We have talked about the it's called functional assessment, the ABCs, how we identify a specific behavior, and then we look at what immediately precedes and what immediately follows it. We've looked at the function of screaming. We've looked at things that we can ask the animal to do instead of screaming. We've looked at how the advice on the internet reinforces screaming because it occurs in the consequence position. And we've looked, very well-meaning people who love their birds just don't always get this. I see looking at the pet store and I'll be walking through there and hear what advice is being given. And I thought, and how long till this one shows up at the rescue? Because they're talking about giving the bird a consequence for screening, and it will be a reinforcement that they're delivering. So, do we have questions?
Okay, feel free to unmute yourself or to type in chat. And Susan wrote, I give my Amazons a short piece of spray millet. I call them the silencers.
Oh, I'm going to steal that.
We all do that. As you guys, right before the meeting started, I threw some loose millet into the treat bowl for the cockatiels.
Yeah.
I'm quiet before the meeting started. So, yeah, I don't have a problem with using bribes. Do you, Debbie?
I don't call them bribes. They are reinforcers. We're giving them a job to do. So bribe implies doing something wrong or shady or what. No, I'm just saying, do you want a job to do? Here you go. Here's your paycheck.
Mhm. Yeah.
Susan?
Yes, I don't have a question per se, but I do have a comment. I have Amazons, and I found that Michael Schindlinger had done a lot of research about Amazon languages, and I had three different species of Amazons. One was a double yellowhead. When I introduced a second double yellowhead, oh my goodness, they spoke the same language. It was double yellowhead hell for a month. But then they just settled down and they, jabber away to each other. And my orange winged Amazon, I found with orange wings, they like to kind of apprentice themselves to another bird. When she was across the room from the other birds, she would not shut up. I moved her right next to my Red Lord Amazon and problem solved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Ann Brooks, who is the founder of Phoenix Landing, you probably know her, and you work with her, Amy, at Lefebvre, right? Um, so she travels, she does eco tours in the wild, and she observes Amazons and other parrots in the wild. And years ago, she said that they were, I think maybe at the Salt Licks, don't quote me on that, and they realized that these birds were doing this weird subguttural vocalization. And it sounds kind of like, can you hear that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, go up to your Amazon and do that. Every time I have done this, the Amazon has gone. And the weird thing is, the other species do the same thing. So even though Anne hasn't reported, say, a macaw doing this, I'm telling you, you do it, and all these birds freeze and look like, what? Where'd she learn to do that? And it's funny because when people hear me doing that, like, what on earth is she doing now?
Yeah, I just want to mention, I think it was Katie who mentioned about how birds here are walking, moving around. They are so finely attuned to that. My bedroom's upstairs, and the moment I even just start to stir, before I even get out of bed, I just have started moving, preparing to get out of bed, they start screaming, calling to me to say good morning, basically. And it doesn't go on forever. We exchange calls back and forth a few times, and then they're quiet. But I'm like, how do they even know I'm about to get out of bed? What if I'm just turning in bed?
Great
But
animals, their senses
they
are
know
very
it.
acute. And you just said something that's pure gold. You said you exchange some stuff back and forth. Okay. My prediction is if you didn't, their vocalization would get louder and louder. But you're smart. You go ahead and go, yeah, I'm up. How are you up? Did you sleep well last night? Yes, I did. Did you have any good dreams? You're back and forth. So they don't need to escalate their behavior.
Right. And to your point, if I didn't, I've actually tried that to see what happens, and they absolutely escalate. Especially my cockatoo, she will not stop until I return the call, and then she's fine. So that's perfectly appropriate screaming. And I
Yeah.
welcome that. I love the fact that you're feeding me.
I
And
didn't talk about appropriate screaming, but if there's a predator call, you want that bird doing that. I mean,
Yeah.
and we should not try to train out an instinctive.
Mhm.
That's not in the best interest of anybody.
oh,
Um,
absolutely.
I
When
my
there's
I don't
when there's
have
a
window
hawk
coverings
outside,
on the back of my house, and so my cockatoo was having a meltdown one day, and I came running because it was definitely a very upset predator call. And I looked at him and said, Buddy, there's nothing out there. I don't know why or argue with him. I'm wrong every time I do this, mind you, but I still do it. And there was nothing. There was absolutely nothing. I could see all the trees. There was nothing in it. No hawks, no owls, no, nothing. And I finally thought, I'm going to go sit outside in the backyard for a while and read a book. And so I'm sitting out there and I just happened to look up, and there in the tree closest to my house was a barred owl. And I'm sure he'd been there the whole time, but he blended in beautifully when I was looking out the window. I did not see him, but he did. And he flew around the backyard for a while and finally flew to my neighbor's house. But yeah, we don't want to train that out. That is a functional behavior.
wow.
Ruth Ann's got a hand up.
Yeah, and we actually have a bunch of comments too. So you know what? Do you want to stop sharing, and then we can get people on the screen?
Sure.
Yeah.
There we go.
Excellent. Okay. All right. Now who had a hand up?
Ruth,
I did, Ruth Ann. Hi, Debbie. I had cockatiels, and a friend of mine decided while he was divorcing his spouse and needed a home for his macaw. So I have a blue and gold macaw who came to me after my daughter had gone off to college. So I accepted it. And the bird actually, with her vocalization, taught me to that what she needed was, once it starts getting dark, I really want darkness. And so covering her cage at that house works. And at this house, I close off that room and the lights go off, and that settles her. But the thing I have a problem with, if she hears me talking on the phone in the next room, she starts shrieking. And does that mean she wants to be part of the conversation?
does it mean that it's been X amount of time since she had attention from you? I do not know the answer to that.
Yeah,
It's hard to experiment with that, right? So I'd probably go the antecedent route. I'm a big believer in using music for our birds, and I use it in two different ways. I read about something called solfeggio tones or solfeggio frequencies, Solfeggio, and they were developed for use in humans to lower stress level, to lower
Uh-huh.
respiratory rate, the heart rate, the blood pressure, all of that type of things. And I thought, wonder if it would work with birds. So I started playing around when I would have a client and they were having some high energy issue. I would ask them to do that. And it's anecdotal evidence. This is not a scientific study, but every single person has had a positive response from that. So,
Could you spell that again, please?
yeah, Solfeggio. Yep, Solfeggio.
I,
Okay.
I just looked that up.
There you go. Yeah, it's easy to find and you can get them on loop, so you can play it for several hours if you want to. And the other thing that you can do is the exact opposite. So if you want to burn off energy, put on head banging rock and stand there and jump up and down with the bird. Okay,
Ooh,
that's going to accomplish it too. Yeah, the solfeggio frequencies, they're calming to us, and I think you probably enjoy listening to them. Um,
Yeah,
Frank, I can't tell you how much I love that.
it, it's interesting what you said about the phone because I certainly experienced that, and everyone I know has experienced that. You start talking on your phone, and the bird wants to join in, and that's going to be hard to train out because you can't go silent. You want to talk on the phone to somebody.
Mhm.
So how are you going to stop? But one of my cockatiels, he use he will actually just come over and demand to talk on the phone too. And sometimes, if it's somebody he knows, he will sit there and put his little beak to the phone and I'm standing here holding the phone while he's having a conversation with somebody. And they talk and he responds. They don't understand the same language, but they're literally having this conversation. So um
Is there a
it's
time
kind of
limit to how long he does that?
he's gone as long as like 5 minutes maybe or so where they'll be having this conversation. And well, usually it's because I'm like, okay, it's my turn.
Yeah.
I know he might go, if a friend will go all night, maybe he would too. I'm not sure, but yeah, but it's hard if you're trying to have a conversation on the phone and the bird is screaming and then you can't hear the person. So
Yep.
but I think it's very common that they do this.
I
pretty
think so.
annoying on their end.
Yeah.
AirPods.
Yeah. So a
Yeah.
couple of good questions I just want to hit. Somebody is making containers of paper and goodies to give the cockatoo. They do it ahead of time. That's brilliant. Yep, because you don't have to worry about not having anything. That was Dawn. And then somebody says the sun conure calls out when she can't see me. So that's a contact thing. Like where'd the flock go? Hey, where's my flock? I would call back. I might even initiate it as soon as I get out of the line of sight. So see if she responds to that. you can call back and forth while you're in the bathroom. It doesn't take a whole lot of effort to do that. So that's probably what I would do. And because again, and her last thing was anything I can try to remove this natural behavior. You hit the nail on the head, Holly. It is a natural behavior. It's contact with the flock. So I would not even attempt to do it. I would just have the flock call back and forth. I think that's the easiest way of contending with that. And Darlene said she got to go to Costa Rica. With Phoenix Landing. Okay, I read that differently. Great songbirds and great green macaws and scarlet macaws. My vet, Dr. Frank Rotowski, just retired and moved to Costa Rica, and he called me about a month ago and said, I just had somebody drop out. You can go. The only thing you have to pay is your flight. And I could not do it because I had so many presents. I was like, Dad, gummit. But I had stuff that had been booked for a while, but not, they had a wonderful time.
So
Orange,
Debbie Russell went instead.
well, there's two Debbie Fosters. Yeah, I didn't know that she went in place of that. I thought they had planned that ahead of time because I think her husband went too, right?
No,
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 Bob. Okay. Yeah,
no, he didn't go, but Frank was on this trip,
yeah,
and he had just moved to Costa Rica the week before
yeah.
the trip.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're holding grudges against him around this part because he's flown the coop, as it were, and moved to paradise. That was very rude of him, as I've told him multiple times. So we're all
Yeah.
to punt around here to find vets. Um, let's see, anything else?
Oh, look
Well,
at
Paul tells Alexa to play music at 6 a.m. I guess that keeps him calm, right?
look what Susan wrote about my orange wing tattles on the other birds. When anyone is conditioned, she sounds the alarm.
I'm curious. Orange wings are usually, in my experience, quieter Amazons, certainly than blue fronts, yellow nape, double yellows. Okay. Um,
You're on, Susan.
do you have smaller birds, Susan? Is that what she's tattling on?
No, Amazon. Susan, unmute. Susan, you need to unmute. Oops. Maybe she didn't
As
hear.
Amazons.
Oh, well.
She only has Amazons?
Yes.
Yeah,
Ah, okay, interesting.
you
Four
might have
Amazons.
three.
Well,
I think it's four. Four Amazons.
I guess that is really kind of handy, right? If
Oh,
they're
Dawn writes, oh yeah, my Amazon does the same thing when a bird is on the floor. Well,
yeah,
actually, so if I've stepped out of the room for a minute and one of my cocktails has gone to the floor, my cocktail will scream to let me know things are not as they should be and a bird is in distress. So it's great when you have a bird that does that.
yeah, absolutely. There's a horrible situation recently where somebody had an Amazon who was on the floor frequently, and the woman came down the stairs carrying a laundry basket and did not know that the bird had come across the room and was at the base of the stairs, probably going to go find her, and she stepped on the bird and killed him, which I just can't even imagine.
Oh my God. I'm surprised it happened with macaw. I mean, it's very easy to do with a little bird, but
Mm,
macaws are so much bigger. Of course, we are still, you know, many
yeah.
times bigger than they are.
So Carol asked what frequencies of solfeggio works. I don't know is the short answer, but the long answer is I would try them all because if they're all um, designed to lower systems in the body in humans, I would think they'd all work. I could be wrong. Give it a try and see what happens. They're very relaxing for me too. I will tell you that. I do like it when I put those on for him. And of course, Parrot TV has a variety of music that you can choose to go with the the scenes.
Right.
So did
Yeah.
I give you new information tonight, guys? Did you had
Yeah.
you okay? Good.
I have one more kind of general question about competitive vocalization between parrots. Like I have a red crowned Amazon and a African gray. They're both female. And the African gray is more of a newcomer, and the red crowned Amazon can get very jealous and try to silence the gray by yelling louder at her. And so that can get frustrating because vocalization that they could really enjoy together, like singing, like I can get only one of them to really enjoy it at the time, and the other one will just be like, "Rah!" So I'm just curious if you have any specific advice around sort of managing that.
It's delicious. Yes, I do. So again, they're capable of observational learning. If you supersize reinforcement for the quieter bird, whatever it's doing, whispering, whistling, singing, just talking quietly, I bet you money over time, I don't know how much time it's going to take, that other bird's going to be going, wait a minute. Okay, I'll be quiet now.
Got it. Okay,
Give it a
helpful.
try.
Thank you.
Be very consistent. Don't leave them guessing. Just be very consistent.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Thanks.
that's fun. Okay, Dawn says she knows exactly what she's doing wrong. All right, there you go.
Yeah, I'm just thinking back. There have been certain cocktails I've had or I have pets sit who will do one particular repetitive song, and it's usually not something pleasant, but even something pleasant can always turn unpleasant when you've heard it a million times. But they'll do this one song just something like that over and over again for hours. Or one bird in particular, I remember, and I was giving zero reinforcement, and the bird wasn't looking to me for reinforcement, positive, negative, any interaction. They were just sitting there in their cage or on their cage, doing that thing over and over again. And obviously it pleased them or they wouldn't have done it. But there was nothing for me to remove from this situation because they weren't interacting with me in the first place about the vocalization. So what do you do with something like
Yeah,
that?
that's a great question. So a couple of things popped in with you describing that. Did you ever look at them? That might have been enough to keep it going, even though to us it's not anything big, but maybe.
But I never got the sense though that it had anything to do with me. Like
Mhm,
it could have been in another room. They could have
mhm.
been half a mile away by themselves, and they would just do that because they're happy and singing their little song.
Yeah. Was this a song that you taught them, or was this cockatoo
So,
singing? Okay.
cockatiels they all develop their own
So
songs.
natural behavior then again, right?
Yes.
So that's another thing I'd be looking at. Hmm, there's another thing I wanted. And they did it when you weren't in the room too.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay,
And
so
this happened with several cockatiels. I'd either had or would pet sit. I
mhm,
think it's just a very common cockatiel thing for them to just sing out their little hearts because they enjoy doing it, and
yeah,
they
yeah,
weren't looking for a mate or anything like that. They just seem to enjoy singing.
okay, and
And
maybe
I gotta be honest, if it's a nicer song, then I'm less bothered by it. If it's a song just grates on me, I'm like, oh my God, I want to strangle this bird.
yeah, they make their definition of nice and ours might be very different.
Very different, right? And it just has to be songs that make them happy and has nothing to do with with me at all. It's just they're doing it for
Right.
their own sake.
If they're repeating it, it's being reinforced somehow, whether we can figure it out or not.
Mm.
Like they go walking up and covering the birds. It took us a long time to figure that one out. Or the bird responding to the beep, beep, beeps. Took us a long time to figure that out. And Bonnie, with Gabriel, and this was an individual, very individual thing. Bonnie's sensitive to noise, and I'm actually working with somebody tomorrow that had her second subdural hematoma. So
Um,
big serious head injuries, and she has that little adorable budgie, that's her bird, and he's driving her crazy. She said he's so loud she can't stand it. And I try not to burst out laughing because cockatoo, budgie. But I said to her, do you think you're more sensitive because of your injury? I could certainly see that that might be a possibility. And she said, do you hear it? He's doing it now. And he was just doing the normal little budgie chatter.
yeah.
I could just barely hear it through the phone. So it was interesting to me, and I'm not sure she may end up giving up the bird. And it won't be the worst case scenario. This is a really highly trained bird at this point because I've worked with him since he came home. So it's not the worst case scenario. It got her through the death of her husband. So that was another thing that it gave her something to focus on and somebody in the house with her. So and I'm sure he will go, somebody will adopt him quickly.
Yeah, I mean, some people are just like that. My friend's husband, yeah, they had to stop pet sitting my birds because, he felt the cockatiels, and my cockatiels were really pretty quiet, the ones I have at that time. And he couldn't take any noise like that. I mean,
Right.
there's just some people are just really sensitive, and it
Right.
doesn't have to be the volume. It can be the particular frequency or the just the type of sound. So the woman with the subdural, maybe she can tolerate some other sounds, but there's something about the budgie sound that is like ice picks in her head,
Right.
and that may or may not improve. With
Yeah.
someone like Bonnie, I mean, that's just part of her genetic makeup. So, but
Well,
she
and I think with Bonnie, Bonnie was so consistent. She didn't try and pull I reinforce him if I've got time. No, 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 no. That's not the way this works. You've got to supersize the reinforcement report when you want to hear more of. And she was consistent with that. And Gabriel also had some really good vocal behaviors. It could be cute, like he would sing "If You're Happy and You Know It," which was so cute. And he pumps his little fist when he does woo woo. That's his clap your hands. Um, yeah, so she's got all kinds of things she can reinforce with him. Now, will
right.
he scream after a certain period without attention? I would be willing to bet you money he still would, as would almost all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It can be really hard. And people, especially with cockatoos, I mean, you can certainly train out some of the stuff, but it's natural behavior. This is what cockatoos do. And if you're going to get a cockatoo and think that you can train it to not say anything, then you shouldn't have a cockatoo. This is what they're like. Or you're living in an apartment building, you can't bring in an umbrella cockatoo, period. It is
Yeah.
not going to work. Your neighbors are going to be very unhappy with you. So you
You're going
have
to
to
be happy
recognize,
if you're evicted. Yeah. It's
and all birds are going to scream at times. We're talking today about, keeping it manageable or stopping them certain types of screaming, but you have to allow birds to scream at times, like when they're greeting you or the beginning of the day or the end of the day, or you're taking away something that's essential to their natural being.
Yeah, I remember Liz Wilson. Do you remember? You all know that
Like,
name? Okay. I remember an article she wrote for Bird Talk early on. And she was not a scientifically trained person, but we can say she was certainly one of the first behavior consultants. And
yeah,
her bird Sam, I think was the bird's name, right? Was
I
it?
don't remember.
Anyway, before her husband would come home, she and Sam would run up and down the stairs and scream bloody murder. So it drained the energy. So when Sam's dad got home, Sam was quiet because Sam was tired. And I thought that was brilliant. I remember early on thinking, what if you do that and it doesn't work? I mean, that's terrifying if you think about a cockatoo screaming more. That's really scary. But there's a certain energy budget for everything. We can't just go out and run and keep running and run some more. Run. Sooner or later, we got to stop. I think it's the same thing with any behavior. Sooner or later, you hit a wall.
Right. Well, it's like children. You have to tire. If you've got 3-year-old, you have to tire them out too.
Yep.
But it's what people don't realize is how much parrots scream in the wild.
Hmm.
So I mean, I've been fortunate enough to see a lot of parrots all around the world, and they all have one thing in common. They scream. The wild parrots scream. We don't even know why they scream. Wild parrots, you can be there and they're just screaming their heads off, and it doesn't even appear to have a particular reason other than that's just what they do. In fact,
Well,
the
it's
video,
probably some communication, and they scream loud so that it carries a long ways. There's that.
right, but it's just, parrots in the wild scream like crazy. In fact, the video I'm going to send everyone, the club members, this evening from our sponsored Venacious Amazon box shows the newly fledged parrots and their parents flying through the sky screaming. You
Awesome.
always, you always know when you're out in the wild, you always know where the parrots are because they are screaming.
Mhm. Yep. I've had people say, how can I keep my bird from chewing things? And I said, what I remember hearing from people who do eco tours is if you want to find the parrots, find a huge mess on the ground and look up.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, these are natural behaviors, and if you can't figure out a way to keep them from chewing on your great grandmother's console, then
Yeah,
you need to find something to keep them occupied, but you can't stop them from chewing.
right. The
You know,
first, um,
it would be like us having mosquito bites or something and saying you are never allowed to scratch an itch for the rest of your
right.
life.
The
You try to
first,
eliminate.
I think, behavior thing I went to was Barbara Heidenreich, and this was 20 years ago or more, and she's absolutely awesome. And so somebody said, "How can I keep my bird from chewing the window frames?" And she said, "Well, where's the bird when it's doing it?" And they said, "On the cage." And she looked at him and she said, "Move the
Move.
cage away."
Hey,
And the woman that had asked the question looked like Moses had just come down with more Ten Commandments on stones. It was hysterical. But I mean, antecedent arrangement. We're talking about an environmental setup to promote the behavior we want to see and make the behavior we don't want to see harder, more effortful. Yeah, less reinforcing. Yeah.
yeah, I've always found that with my birds as well. It, there's a certain amount of energy they want to expend. They can expend more if they need to, but they don't want to. So if my birds, they'd rather me pick them up or they'd rather walk around the counter to get to me than fly because the energy to fly is so much more. They want to take the easier route. So if you make something easier to chew than your window frames, they're going to chew the thing that's easier to get to.
Yeah.
Uh, so it's not a question of eliminating something, it's a question of because the birds are just like us. They don't want to work hard either. They want to take the easiest route to something.
Mhm.
So if you make things easy, whatever you make easier for them is going to be what they're going to do.
Yep. Absolutely. So I didn't, I'm missing a couple of slides. So I don't know what happened to them, although my computer's been trying to crash all week. So what I will do is I will send Amy the last slide, which is my contact information. So if you guys wanted to contact me, you can look at I write a blog for Companion Parrots Rehomed every Tuesday called Takeover Tuesday. You can go on their Facebook page and see that. My page is Parrot P's and Q's, as in mind your P's and Q's, which I thought I was being very clever. It turns out that's a generational thing and people don't know what that means anymore. Oh well. Had
I
it
don't I don't even know what does that mean?
it came from Mind Your Pints and Quarts, and it was a bartending thing, I think. But basically, it's pay attention to what you're doing, and so it's more a behavior thing, mind your manners type thing. So I thought that was a pretty good thing for a behavior consultant to do. But yeah,
Yes.
oh
Yes, indeed.
well, it's too late to change it now, so it's been
All
around.
right. Do we have any
Makes
last questions?
perfect sense to me. I love it. Thank you.
Oh, good. I'm glad. So if you guys decide that you ever need some help, I do work with individuals on consultations. And since you're mostly in Connecticut, I presume it would be a virtual consultation. We did not know that that was possible until COVID hit. So there's a blessing from COVID because I've got international clients now, and I never saw myself doing that. But we can certainly work over the phone and via some sort of a video as well. And it helps sometimes just to have somebody objective. When we're in the middle of this and it's wearing on our last nerve, it's hard to be objective. And if you start digging around, I don't
Oh,
know.
here,
I've got one of my dogs is in here and he dreams and he does the yips and I'm hearing the yips, but I don't see the dog. So that's why I was looking to see where he was because he's got to be somewhere close. Um,
actually, we have a bunch of people on here from Long Island, and we have some people from all over. We actually, we take members in from everywhere. We have a distance membership, so people can join us, and our Zooms are open to everyone anyhow. But yeah,
oh,
so we actually have membership all over the country now.
I think
But
I spoke to a Long Island Parrot Club sometime in the last few years. I think I have a T-shirt with that on it. I'm not
well,
positive.
Susan can answer that. She's
Oh,
former
really?
president and, former president of Blips, and she's on there. She's still muted. Um, but yeah, so yeah, it's been fantastic press because we can bring in great speakers like you from anywhere.
Well, I hope that you got good information from it, and then we were able to dig a little deeper since you guys had some experience. Because sometimes I have to start at a lower level. It just kind of depends.
Oh, Heidi asked, we be able
Go
to,
ahead.
oh yeah, so Heidi, yes, I will be uploading it to YouTube. You will be able to see it there, and I will send it out. So you can just go to our YouTube channel, and if you subscribe, you don't have to worry about whether or not you get the link to the recording. Oh, and RJ says, I certainly will reach out for more education and even personal training. I'm a rescue volunteer, but have no parrots at home. Right.
I'm
And
sure
then
they can fix that.
we have a bunch of people. Thank you. Oh, and Carol says, do you ever find that sometimes the bird's behavior is justifiable and the people's behavior is what needs to be modified?
Yes, I do. And again, one of those good examples is um, that bird bites my hand every single time. Where's your hand? In the cage. Why is your hand in the cage? I want the bird to come out of the cage. What happens if you open the door and take a step back? The bird comes out. You're not bleeding. The bird hasn't been able to bite you because the bird couldn't reach you because your hand wasn't in the cage. That to me, that's a win-win all the way around. Okay, everybody got their needs met. So that's an example where yeah, I would say let's just change what we're doing to change what the bird does or doesn't do. So yeah, absolutely, Carol. And that's one of those things where sometimes objective eyes are good because we think we're bigger, stronger, smarter than they are. Well, maybe not, and I'm
Well,
speaking for
we're
myself
bigger.
too. Yeah, yeah.
What what I
So
would what I'm thinking about is there's a bird group on Facebook that I belong to, and there seem to be some younger people in it, students, and they have single birds, and the birds are kept in their bedroom. They're not out in a public, in an area of the house where the family congregates. So the bird is alone in a cage in the bedroom with the door shut and it's screaming. And they say, I don't know what to do because my bird is in the cage screaming all day. And my inclination is to just say, you're depriving the bird from being with its flock. Get the bird out of your bedroom and into a part of the house where the rest of the people are. And they say, well, but my mother hates the bird. And it's like, then you shouldn't have a bird,
yeah.
I think people just don't understand birds. That's the
Exactly. They make
problem.
rash, impulsive decisions and bring one home, and the bird ends up paying for it, which is a real shame. I
Yeah.
joke that an 8-year-old could get a budgie, and somebody could set up a Facebook page for the kid, and by the end of the day, they'll have 2,500 followers and be the new expert. Because I think we're just looking for easy. We want to blame something other than ourselves. Can't possibly be our fault.
Yeah.
And we want to make it easy on ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
There's one other thing that I want to share, and that is that I had a gold-capped conure
Mhm.
for 27 years, a long time ago. And she was flighted, and she liked you were talking before about chewing on window sills and stuff like that. Well, she'd be on doors, she'd be on windowsill, she'd be on everything, and she destroyed more things than I can begin to tell you. But 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 what I learned to do as far as modifying my own behavior, rather than trying to keep her from chewing on that and distracting her, was I went to, one of the Home Depot or Lowe's or something and got those little plastic edge guards. They're clear
Mhm.
plastic that people put on their walls to keep
Yep.
vertical walls to keep the kids from, riding their little tricycles into. And still, every door in my house has those plastic things on it. The the trim on the tops of my windows. I mean, you name it. And I mean, Cricket died in 2013, and um, I rescued some birds 4 years later, and they don't chew on stuff like that. But if anybody comes into my house, they say, why do you have those edge protectors on the top of all your doors? It's just because I never took them down. But
And
that really works because they can't
yes,
through those. So
next
you
time they ask, say that's antecedent arrangement and just move on away.
yeah, it really does work though.
So one of the former Phoenix Landing board members who passed away, he was a doll, and he and I did workshops together. People were asking about how to keep birds on the cage, on the top of the cage. And he got panels from Lowe's or Home Depot, and you can get them in acrylic. They're very expensive. If you get the metal, they're not so expensive. And you just drill a hole and use an S hook and you hang it on some of the crossbars. So it creates a sheer surface so the parrot can't shimmy down. Now, of course, if the parrot is flighted, then that's not going to do the trick.
Yeah.
It does sometimes give you an opportunity to teach the replacement behavior, okay? Before you're having to deal with a bird that's, on the ground under the cage. And one of my friend's birds in the dishwasher, a male eclectus, they could not unload or load the dishwasher because he'd be in there going, baby, 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 baby.
I have one more question, if I might. I don't want to take away anybody else's time. But I just wondered if some of one example in particular that you gave was about the eclectus, that the woman approached the cage and covered the cage and that kind of thing. And I have I'd like to know if that can sort of be extrapolated to a different kind of behavior. I have three rescues. Two of them are paired. A white-winged parakeet and a cinnamon green cheek.
Mm.
And they're paired and they're bonded and they live together. And I also have a sun conure, and the green cheek and the sun are both females. And the green cheek is extremely aggressive toward the sun conure. And I like to let everybody out at the same time, but if I turn my back on them, the green cheek goes into the sun conure's cage, and the sun conure is terrorized. She's terrified of this little bird, and there's a scream that she makes, and I know that Peep is the name of the green cheek. I know Peep's in the cage or is approaching it.
Mhm.
And what I've been doing that completely doesn't work is when she does that, I'll go over to the cage and I'll go no, and I'll take her out. And I have nearby a travel cage that they play on and all of that. I'll put her in the travel cage and I'll throw a towel over it and just, leave it for 2 or 3 minutes or whatever. But I'll say no. And every time she does that, I immediately go over there and do that. And this has been going on for years. It just doesn't stop her from doing it. I
So
don't
what
know what
you're
to
telling me
do.
is saying no and putting her in the travel cage and carrying her isn't covering her is not working, right?
No,
I would use antecedent arrangement. If I'm going to leave the room, I'm going to close the sun conures cage so that the green cheek cannot have access to it. And then when I come
just
back,
do that.
I'll
Just
open it back.
yeah, yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
that's the easiest way of doing it because what you're doing is not working. She's
Yeah.
not getting the message, and it's because it's not connected in time.
And there's no way to keep her from attacking the sun conure. She just
Mhm.
constantly goes after her, terrorizes her. Okay. I just have to.
One more idea for you. It may have something to do with the proximity of the cages. So you might try separating the cages a little more if you have the room to do that and see what happens.
Yeah.
But the easiest and the surest way to make sure that nobody is hurt is to close the door.
Yeah.
Is it possible in this situation or in other situations that, when Carol said she's doing it immediately, and she may very well be making a connection, but is it possible that her desire to terrorize the sun conure is more than her anger, disappointment, whatever, it being put in the travel carrier? That, because you see children like this, you punish them and they absolutely understand what they've done is wrong, but they want to do the bad thing so much that they don't care. The punishment is less problematic for them than doing the thing that they really want.
Behavior that's reinforced repeats in the future. So if that behavior going into that cage for whatever reason is more reinforcing, and it's certainly the bird's controlling the timing there, okay? But the no and the removing the bird and the taking it to the travel cage and the covering, that's all delayed. So that actually is not the mark of a good consequence.
Carol, does the green cheek do that when you're in the room or only when you leave the room?
Oh no, I don't leave the room. I could just turn my back, to be at the kitchen sink, and I'll hear the sun conure shriek, and it's definitely a noise that I know that the green cheek is going into her cage. She doesn't make that noise any other time. I'm right in the room. I could just turn my back and immediately she just
But does the green cheek ever do that if you're staring right at them? Or only turn your back or do something?
I'm trying to think. No, I don't think she does it when I'm looking at her.
So she knows it's wrong then.
Yeah, I think
It's
so.
only doing it when mom isn't directly.
Yeah.
But
we
knows
can prove that we don't know what they think, feel, or believe, but that's one of those things that we but we don't want it to happen. We don't want anybody getting hurt.
No,
so
no, because she's hurt her. She bit her foot once.
Good night, all.
Yeah, it's not good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Factor.
I'll just have to prevent it from happening. Just, the antecedent change.
There you go. Antecedent arrangement.
Yeah.
All righty. Do we have any more questions?
Thank you for the lovely comments, folks.
Yeah. So if not, I want to thank everybody for coming. We appreciate your coming to the meeting, and I will get everybody the information from Debbie about how you can get to her Facebook page or ask her questions. The recording will go up on YouTube, so I will be sending the link out. And for those of you who found us through some other way, just go check out our YouTube channel and you'll see it there. And with that, I will stop the recording now.